This is Girija Pendare from Division B, roll number 54, batch 3 and group 10. We, the members of group 10, are here to explain about motherboard. So, the topics we are going to explain are definition of motherboard, then components and slots used, CPU socket and RAM slots, expansion slots, storage connectors and power connectors. So now we will see what is a motherboard. A motherboard, also called as main board, main circuit board, MB, M board, black plane, backplane board, base board, system board, MOBO, or in Apple computers, logic board, is the main printed circuit board in general purpose computers and other expandable systems. It holds and allows communication between many of the crucial electronic components of the system, such as the central processing unit, CPU, and memory, and provides connectors for other peripherals. Unlike a backplane, a motherboard usually contains significant subsystems such as the central processor, the chipsets, input or output, and memory controllers, interface connectors, and other components integrated for general use. Motherboard means specifically a PCB with expansion capabilities. As the name suggests, this board is often referred to as the mother of all components attached to it, which often include peripherals, interface cards, and daughter boards, that is sound cards, video cards, network cards, host bus adapters, TV tuner cards, IEEE 1394 cards, and a variety of other custom components. Similarly, the term main board describes a device with a single board and no additional expansions or capability, such as controlling boards in laser printers, television sets, washing machines, mobile phones, and other embedded systems with limited expansion abilities. Thank you.
My name is Chirag Bhagat, roll number 58 from Group 10, Batch 3. So I am here to give some information about I/O ports. I/O ports are basically external connectors that allow you to connect peripheral and other devices to your computer. The I/O ports are usually located on back of the motherboard and they vary depending upon the specific motherboard model. However, some of the most common I/O ports found on motherboard include USB ports. USB ports are most common I/O ports found on motherboard. They allow you to connect various devices such as printers, keyboards, mice, and external hard drives to your computer. Most modern motherboards have multiple USB 3.0 or USB 3.1 Gen 1 ports, which offer faster transfer speed than other USB 2.0 ports. And the second type of I/O ports is audio jacks. The audio jacks on the motherboard allow you to connect speaker or headphones to your computer. Most motherboards have a 3.5 mm audio jack for headphones or speakers and a separate 3.5 mm audio jack. And the second type of ports are video ports. The video ports on motherboard allow you to connect a display to your computer. Most modern motherboards have a built-in graphics card that supports HDMI, DisplayPort, or VGA output. However, if you need to connect multiple displays or require high performance, you may need to add a dedicated graphics card with its own video outputs. Fourth type of ports are Ethernet ports. The Ethernet ports on motherboard allows you to connect your computer to a wired network. It is typically a standard RJ45 connector and supports speed up to 1 gigabytes per second. There are some other ports that are included in motherboard that are PS2 ports for older keyboards and mice, serial and parallel ports for legacy devices, and Thunderbolt or Firewire ports for high-speed data transfer. Thank you.
Myself, Prasad Belure, roll number 53. So we are talking about expansion slots. Expansion slots are the port on the motherboard where you can plug in extra hardware components to add new feature or improve the performance of your computer. These slots are designed to fit in specific types of cards such as graphic card, sound card, networking card. Each type of slot has its own shape and size. The most common type of slot is PCLE, which is very fast, while the older ISA slot is rarely used. When installing a new expansion card, you need to make sure it fits in your slot of your motherboard and it's compatible with your operating system. PCLE stands for Peripheral Component Interconnect Express. It is a high speed serial computer expansion bus standard that is used to connect peripheral devices to the motherboard of a computer. PCL is a popular type of expansion slot that allows the fast communication between the computer's processor and the peripherals such as graphic cards, sound card, network cards, and storage devices. While we let's talk about the history, that's the ISA. ISA stands for the Industry Standard Architecture. It was type of expansion slot found in the older 90s and 80s. ISA slots were used to connect expansion cards such as modems and network cards to the computer's motherboard. ISA slots were relatively slow and had maximum data transfer rate around 8 megabits per second, which is very low than the PCLE, which has about 32 gigabytes per second. PCLE X16 and PCLE X1 are the types of expansion slots found on the computer's motherboard we have taken here. These slots are used to connect different types of expansion cards to the motherboard, which can add new features to your computer. PCLE X16 has the larger and faster slot that is primarily used for the high performance devices such as graphic cards. It has 16 lanes to allow high-speed data transfer, making it ideal for demanding applications like gaming and video editing. Graphic cards often require PCLE 16 slots to operate at full speed and deliver best performance. PCLE X1, on the other hand, is a smaller and slower slot which is used for lower performance devices such as sound cards or network cards. It has only one data link, which makes it slower than PCLE X16, but it's still faster than older types of expansion slots like PCL. The number after PCLE-X indicates the number of data lanes that the slot has. More the data lanes mean higher the performance. So the PCLE-X16 slot has 16 data lanes, while the PCLE-X1 has only one. While installing a expansion card, it's important to choose the right slot that matches the card's requirements.
Hello everyone, myself Om Badane, roll number 55, and I am here to talk about the storage connectors of the motherboard. So a motherboard is typically has several storage connectors to enable the connection of the various storage devices. Here are some most common storage connectors. First one is the SATA, Serial Advanced Technology Attachment. This is the most common storage connector on the motherboards used to connect hard disk drives, solid state drives, and optical drives. SATA ports can transfer data at the speeds of to 6 GB. Second one is M2, formerly known as NGFF or Next Generation Form Factor. This is relatively new connector that is designed for the high-speed SSD. It is a small rectangular connector that can be found on the motherboard on or on separate adapter card. Third one is the U2. This connector is also designed for the high-speed SSDs and is commonly found on enterprise class motherboards. U2 SSDs are used same interface as SAS, which are the serial attached SCSI hard drives and can achieve transfer speeds up to 32 GBs. Fourth one is a PCIe, Peripheral Component Interconnect Express. This is a high-speed interface that is used to connect the variety of the expansion cards, including storage device such as NVMe SSDs. NVMe Non-Volatile Memory Express is a protocol that is designed specifically for high-speed SSD and can achieve transfer speeds up to 32 GBs. And last but not least, USB Universe Serial Bus Connectors. USB is widely used connector type that can be used for connecting external storage devices such as USB flash drives and external hard drives. Most motherboards have multiple USB ports that can be used for storage devices. It's worth noting that number and types of the storage connectors on a motherboard can vary depending on the specific model and manufacturer. In the following picture, there are two connector which are the CPU power connector and motherboard power connector. Thank you.
Hello, I am Shaurya Bhade, roll number 56 from B Division, batch 10. So, a CPU socket is a single connector between a microprocessor and a motherboard. It is a distinct mount used only for the CPU on the motherboard to ensure correct circuit chip insertion. It facilitates CPU access and prevents damage when a unit is inserted or removed. A CPU socket also has a lock to prevent CPU movement, and its design helps secure heat sink placement above the CPU. So modern CPU sockets and processor are based on the grid array PGA architecture. A PGA is a type of packaging used for the integrated circuits IC, such as a microprocessor. It is basically a square with pins that are organized below the packaging. Pins are spaced approximately 0.1 inches, which is 2.54 mm, apart to cover a portion or entire underside of the package. Chips with high numbers of pinouts often use land grid array, which is LGA, or zero insertion force sockets, which is ZIF. LGA sockets apply firm force with a surface plate, and ZIF sockets apply compression force with a handle. Each method ensures that upon insertion, the pins are not damaged or broken. A CPU socket is specifically designed for a particular CPU and is usually not interchangeable with types of processors. In many cases, manufacturers classify sockets into different groups. A socket may be identified on its side by a 5-digit ID number. The ID number also ensures that the CPU uses the correct CPU socket. Now we come to the RAM slots. RAM slots are often found in pairs and are sometimes color coded for identification. The RAM slots in a desktop look different than the RAM slots in a laptop. The RAM module is rectangular and has a connector on one of the long sides. RAM slots or sockets on a PC motherboard are long channels generally located close to the CPU. Typically, motherboards have a total of 4 RAM slots or 2 pairs when they are dual channel. Some high-end motherboards may contain as many as 8 slots, and in supercomputers there may be multiple motherboards per system up to 32 slots total. Consumer desktops rarely have more than 4.
My name is Chetan Bhagat, roll number 57. Starting with the power connector. The power connector on a motherboard is a part where the computer's power supply unit, that is PSU, connects to the motherboard to provide power to the various components. This connector is typically a rectangular shape with a row of pins or wires that plug into a matching socket on the motherboard. There are typically two power connectors on a motherboard. First one is main power connector and second one is auxiliary power connector. The main power connector, also known as a 24-pin connector, is responsible for powering the majority of the motherboard's components, including the CPU, memory, and various expansion slots. The auxiliary power connector, often a 4 or 8-pin connector, is used to provide additional power to a CPU. It's important to note that different motherboard may have different power connector requirements. So it's essential to check the motherboard specification before purchasing a power supply unit. Additionally, it's important to ensure that the power supply unit provides enough power to support all the components in the system.